Okay, I know I'm a bit late to the game, but let's talk about Sram T-Type, the new Sram AXS mountain bike groups from just recently. They dropped the derailleur hanger, and people are saying that the UDH derailleur hanger was kind of a Trojan horse for T-Type derailleurs. So let's just start right there. I don't think that's really true. The Sram was very upfront with prototype releases, spy shots of pro bikes showing these new T-type derailleurs on pro bikes for quite some time. We all knew it was coming for a long time, and UDH does solve other problems for other manufacturers in both frame and component, as in standardizing a particular position for a derailleur hanger across all manufacturers, drivetrain or frame. So I still count that as a win for almost everything out there when it comes to bikes. It's part of the way to what T-Type is bringing. Now, I hate the name T-Type. I think it's just like too much, or trying to go like above board with it, but it does bring a couple unique things. I'm going to bring up some other things that other people have not brought up, particularly the cassettes. The cassettes are actually multi-piece now, more pieces than they used to be. So it's kind of a hybrid of pin slash the machine cassettes that we were familiar with on a GX level and below. And what I think it's going to bring is going to be probably cost savings in the long run, especially at the cheaper groups. Although XX and XXSL and even the XO is quite expensive, even a big bump above the previous ones. I think once we get down to the GX and maybe even NX level, hopefully it will move to XT driver as well, it will actually show some cost savings or weight savings. We'll see how that all works out. One of the technologies they keep on talking about is this inline, where they're saying the derailleur cage moves from left to right to always point at the front chainring. I've actually observed this on Sram rear derailleurs for years, actually. This is something that probably is more pronounced with T-type drivetrains, but it's definitely there in the past, even on like original X9 stuff. I remember it doing this ever so slightly. And yeah, I think it just helps better with better engagement and roll on and off from the chainring to the rear derailleur and onto the pulleys. That's one of the reasons I think you don't have derailleur pulleys derailing the chain anymore, as in the falling off the pulleys, which used to happen in older stuff, especially 9-speed and before. So I'll talk about the direct mount here for just a second. So it mounts directly to the frame in place of the UDH hanger. I'll show on one of my bikes here. I don't have the T-type. I'll show you with a regular UDH hanger where it goes on. And one of the biggest things I think that's really allowing is not only is it a stronger, more robust connection than previous derailleur hangers, including the UDH, it is also more precise, as in there's gonna be less flex in the system, especially under higher torques, because actually one of the things they really push about the system is that you can actually shift under power a lot more than you ever could in the past. And I would say that's great, because I think it's actually kind of catching up to Shimano in that way. Shimano drivetrains have definitely been smoother shifting under power. Sram drivetrains have not, I want to say have been lacking. You can always force shift, but they were a lot more clunky, clangy, and a little more crunchy feeling when you shifted under power. So that's actually gonna be nice. Supposedly it actually shifts even better under power from what the other reviews are saying. And for those of you that are worried about, is this gonna be a trouble point for failures, as in causing more derailleur failures or frame failures? Frame failures will need to be seen in the long run, but I think we're actually gonna see derailleur failures go down because of how strong this interface is. I mean, there's been some crazy videos I've seen. I'll link them around here and also put the links in the description below, where these derailleurs have just absolutely been murdered on, either in a laboratory or just kind of laboratory. But yeah, there was some science applied to this one, but then the other one, like Pink Bike particularly, there is a presenter holding a presenter on their back, standing on the derailleur. Old derailleurs definitely aren't going to survive that. Certainly old derailleur hangers would never survive that. So one other thing that Sram did with the T-type derailleurs is they actually made them serviceable, as in repairable. So you can actually replace the whole cage on it. You can also replace the outer side plate, linkage plate, as well as two other, I think they're covers. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what they are. But yeah, that's a huge win, I think. So when people talk about damaging a derailleur or something like that, it is repairable at some level. Clutches do die in the past. Now clutches are replaceable. And the outer plate, which is going to take most of the damage, or outer linkage plate, that's going to take most of the damage, is also replaceable now, along with the two covers. So the two covers, hopefully, are engineered to be able to take impact damage and relieve that from damaging the rest of the derailleur. We'll see with time how that works. We'll see with time how available these replacement parts are, but it is a major selling point that they're pushing out there to the field. You know, everyone's talking about it, so hopefully that is huge for the end user, you and me, who if we do invest in, well, I don't want to say invest, but who do buy one of these products, that we're able to at least keep it and service it for a very long time. This is a promising step. I really wish they would have done this with mechanical derailleurs. If it's actually been possible for most of them, especially the upper end ones, because they actually had removable linkage pins, they just never sold the parts. So I think that's a big step in the right direction, and that the SRAM seems to be committed, even more so than in the past, to actually making things serviceable and repairable, like they have with their forks and shocks and other things like that. Now we're actually looking at drivetrain components having this sort of serviceability. One of the detriments of this, I think it's going to be a little harder to set up than in the past. I think it's going to cause some issues when you have to do more maintenance. You have to take the derailleur off or on. While that will probably will happen a little less, but if you ship your bike or fly for your bike, that's going to be a real issue, I think. It's just not going to be as clean and easy as it was with the older ASX XO drivetrain. I'll show on my touring bike. I actually use ASX on that bike specifically because it is easier to ship and fly with. Literally, you just take off the derailleur, throw it in your backpack, keep it with you. Derailleur doesn't get hurt, derailleur doesn't get hurt. And when you thread it back on, it just is in a perfect position. There's no cables to deal with. That was actually one of my major draws to ASX for mountain biking. The new shifter. This is going to be interesting. I'll be really curious how this actually plays out. Most people seem to think it's pretty good. I have used both the road on my road bike and my touring bike in the past, and my touring bike I currently have a flat bar set up and have the mountain bike shifter. I'm not a huge fan of the mountain bike shifter. I feel that the clicks are not distinct enough, especially if you're in a noisy environment riding on a road by other cars or just in a really choppy section of trail. It's gonna be hard to it's really hard to hear that. So suppose this new one has a little more click to it. Not necessarily harder to push, but more tactile feedback. If you're on keyboards, it'd be a clicky keyboard versus a silent keyboard feeling. Hopefully that's true. We'll see how that is in the real life. We'll have to wait for other people to present it because I'm not going to buy it anytime soon. Because that's the other thing. It's an expensive group set, but I want to make a note about that. So the SXSL, which is the highest end, and you have XX and you have XO, and XO, it's interesting because XXSL is clearly being geared towards cross country only. I mean, not saying that people can't ride in other environments, but it's clearly geared towards cross country. Then you have XX, which is kind of like cross country trailish. That's the way they're kind of gearing it. And I remember saying that XO is kind of going back to its origins of this really tough, trail capable, all mountain enduro, whatever you want to call it, capable, but still has a shifting performance, is still not super heavy, and is premiumly built. And I think they really exemplified that by going back to an aluminum crank, where you're not going to have to worry about the pedal inserts failing or any of those other sort of things. We'll see if they ever make an XO carbon version of the other cranks. I have a feeling they may not. It's also interesting that all the XO cranks, and I think the XX cranks, come with these two quarter bashes that go onto the chainring itself. They sit on either side, top and bottom, to help protect the ring. I find that actually pretty interesting as well, because it's going to definitely be lighter than running a chain guide with that, but you're not going to be able to run an upper guide with those plates, so that's a trade-off. So talking about XO particularly, it's going to come in about $1,500 to $1,600. That's crank, derailleur, shifter, chain, and cassette. So it's pretty much a whole group of minus brakes, which is pretty okay, I think, for $1,600, considering what it's delivering. The interesting point is that it's minus the cranks, it's only like 68 grams heavier than XXSL. So for the tougher derailleur, for the less expensive shifter, which weighs exactly the same as the expensive shifter, and for the cassette and chain, it's only 68 grams heavier. All the other weight gain is in the crank, only in the crank, which is interesting. So the cranks are going to be substantially tougher, being all aluminum. Supposedly it's their toughest crank yet. It's also fairly light. Supposedly it's 80 grams less than XT cranks, which are pretty light even for a trail bike. But XT cranks are, known to be very strong. People run them on enduro bikes all the time with no issue. So if they're going to be as strong, if not stronger than XT, and even lighter than XT, that's pretty good. One other note about the cranks in general is that there's gonna be power meters on all of them available. So the XX and XO get a spindle-based one, similar to what we saw on Rival a year ago or 2 years ago when that came out. So that's nice, you can run whatever chainring you want and get your power data. Yes, it's one-legged versus two-legged, but there's a lot of research saying that most people aren't that out of balance, and it's gonna give you a good idea how much your effort is. You saw the caliber rate for that particular bike. That I actually find to be a very interesting fact, that all the new cranks from Sram for mountain are getting power meters. I have a feeling, based on Rival getting it, that GX will also have that option when it finally releases. So that's pretty cool. And the XXSL gets a special power meter. The ring is replaceable, even though it looks like it's one piece, like SRAM Red or SRAM Force. The ring is replaceable on it, so that's super cool. Looks like it's pretty easy, not field replaceable, race day replaceable, if you ever ran into an issue. I'm not going to talk about the brakes. I don't really find the brakes that interesting. They just moved the lever reservoir location, which is cool for bikepacking. I might do a little thing about that later. So I think it's pretty clear. If I was to buy one of these group sets, and I might in the future, just not right now, I have no particular need for one, I would definitely be buying the XO. It's not a lot heavier. I don't like running carbon cranks on my mountain bikes because I'm a big guy. I know I've talked about that again and again in my other videos, but it's true, I'm a big guy. I don't want to deal with pedal inserts or just other random things that kind of happen with carbon cranks. I have no problem running carbon bars or rims or frames or many other things, but carbon cranks seem to be a failure point, particularly for larger riders. So yeah, I think XO is going to be the ideal group set for most people who have the money for it, are looking for the new stuff, and don't have necessarily this super high need for really lightweight. If you do, buy the XO group set and then the XXSL cranks, because they're actually like 200 grams lighter. That's quite a bit. Well, that's my take on the new SRAM T-type derailleurs and transmission, as we're calling it. Until next time, just ride.